There's only one man in this country that can stop George Wallace and those posses. We can present thousands and thousands of bodies in the streets if we want to. And we can have all of the soul force and the moral commitment around this world. But a lot of these problems will not be solved until that charitably over place called the White House begins to shake and gets on the phone and says, now listen, George, we coming down there and throw you in jail if you don't stop that mess. That's the only way it's going to be stopped. It's not just the sheriff of this county or the mayor or the police commissioner or George Wallace. This problem goes to the very bottom of the United States. And you know, I said it today and I will say it again. If we can't sit at the table, let's knock the legs off, excuse me.
But what we do say that we are concerned with is that he doesn't understand systematic oppression and how it relates to running a system. The University of Missouri was built in 1839 as the first public land-grant institution west of the Mississippi River. Slavery wasn't abolished until 1865. So there is roots of systematic oppression that exist right here on this very campus and in the system as a whole that we have to acknowledge in order to move forward.
Dr. King's policy was that nonviolence would achieve the gains for black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you are nonviolent, if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and will be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one fallacious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. Has none.
We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We don't feel that in 1964, living in a country that is supposedly based upon freedom and supposedly the leader of the free world, we don't think that we should have to sit around and wait for some segregationist congressmen and senators and a president from Texas in Washington, D.C. to make up their mind that our people are due now some degree of civil rights. No, we want it now, or we don't think anybody should have it.
To the lady in admissions who thought it was okay to say the University of Missouri is making strides for change, obviously not. Racism lives here, and so do we. And if you're uncomfortable, I did my job.
You're welcome.
Tigers, how do we feel about that? I say,
the sky's falling, the wind is calling, stand for something or die in the morning.
So the purpose of that intro was to show the correlation between previous Black youth movements and more modern Black youth movements. It opens up with James Forman, and he's talking about how racism is built into the structure of the United States. And he mentioned that it's, all the way down from the president to, your local white neighbor. And then you fast forward 50 years from now, and you have Peyton Head, University of Missouri student body president, talking about how racism is basically built into the infrastructure of Missouri. So basically, in the span of 50 years between Forman and Head, there hasn't been much of a change.
And also, you have Stokely Carmichael, who is talking about the flaw in MLK's nonviolent ideology. And then you fast forward 50 years and you have two girls who are doing something as simple as walking to class being called niggas or being called out of their name, being verbally assaulted just based on the color of their skin.
Yeah, so basically, what's happening in the past is very similar to what's happening now. We have young black leaders from, Peyton Head in Missouri to, people at UT leading these movements. And what we're seeing is that there is a chasm between, MLK's nonviolent ideology to, from Malcolm X's By Any Means Necessary to Stokely Carmichael's more black nationalism and black power. So what we're going to do, I guess, throughout the course of this documentary is kind of explore the origins of these new youth movements, most notably Black Panthers and SNCCs, and then talk about what's happening now and the correlation between those two. The Black Panther Party, also known as the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, was a black nationalist organization formed in the United States. It was formed in Oakland in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale as a means of combating police brutality. Black Panther Party membership consisted of recent migrants whose families traveled north and west to escape the Southern racial regime, only to be confronted with new forms of segregation and repression. Their motto became Black Power after Stokely Carmichael coined the term at a college conference in Berkeley. The Black Power movement was a distinct shift from the nonviolent ideology of MLK because it wasn't meant to appeal to the white moderate, and the turn the other cheek stance was dismantled.
The SNCC, also known as SNCC, is short for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was prevalent during the Civil Rights era. It was initiated with the purpose of allowing younger African Americans the opportunity to voice their opinions and frustrations of the events that were occurring in this time period. Ella Baker, who was one of the directors of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and helped with the first SNCC meeting, was one of the key founders of this organization. Baker encouraged those who formed SNCC to look beyond integration and into social change, and to use MLK's approach of nonviolence as one of the tactics rather than a way of life. This group played a big part in the freedom rides aimed to desegregate buses and the marches that were constructed by MLK and the Southern Christian Leadership Committee. SNCC also directed a lot of the black voter registration drives in the South, and in the late 1960s, SNCC was led by more aggressive leaders like Stokely Carmichael and James Forman. The focus was less on nonviolence and more on the black power and oppression in the Vietnam War.
So now that we've gone through, I guess, two of the major organizations of black youth in the past, what we're seeing is that yes, there is a break between, the older generation, MLK, to, people like James Forman and Stokely Carmichael, but the main idea here is that this isn't just a case of, parents don't understand or they're too outdated or old school. This is a case of young people facing a series of different problems, different forms of racism that their predecessors did not face. For example, Black Panther Party was started after, a lot of these black youths moved west and north, and they're facing different kinds of racism. It's no longer, we can't get jobs because we're black. It's more so we're being underpaid because we're black, or it's dealing with other microaggressions and police brutality. So, like we said, what we're seeing isn't just a case of parents don't understand or you're too old or outdated. It's more so about we are facing different problems and we need to come up with different tactics to deal with those problems. So these new tactics, like, for example, the Black Panthers visibly carrying guns, or students at the University of Missouri shutting down highways to march, they might be seen as aggressive and maybe, anti-MLK, but what it really is young people finding their own identity and creating their own movements.
And to piggyback off of that, with the Mizzou incident, where there were certain racial incidents where the president wasn't taking action on what was going on. Instead, he was dismissing it. There was one kid in particular who was doing a hunger strike, and when the football players saw that this guy was doing a hunger strike, they began to get involved, and they were not going to play until they took action on the incidents that happened, and it's become universal, or everybody's seen it, and now UT stands with them, and they've had strikes and they've had marches to show them that we're here for you along with everyone else.
What Missouri started was kind of a domino effect in terms of Black youth movements standing up. Like you said, like UT was involved, places like Yale, Texas State, all the way even to California and Berkeley. A lot of schools with a substantial Black population are standing in solidarity with the University of Missouri. So like I said, these new tactics might seem a bit aggressive or maybe more modern or like anti-MLK, but what we're really seeing is that these are Black youths creating movements specifically for Black youth. And I mean, a lot of them are inspired by the past. Like, for example, Student on the Hunger Strike. We all know that that's something that Gandhi did several years ago. Or the marches, MLK was a huge proponent of marches. But what we're seeing now is Black students and Black youth in general taking these movements and making it their own. And it's becoming a very important part of Black identity on college campuses and just in general.
My grandmother and my grandparents were Panthers in New York City, right? And they would always tell me that, my generation doesn't have it in us. We don't have the fight in us to care. We don't give a fuck. But I'm really glad that y'all came out here to show all those people wrong, to show UT that we are here with them. We all go to school together and that we are all impacted by the things that go on and the things that happen to us.
The point of this whole march is to start dialogue. It's not to start, it's not to say that we are trying to revolt against anything, against the system, against the man. Like, the whole point of this is to raise issues that are hidden or kept away. We have to understand that if you don't talk about it, then it'll keep on happening. If you don't actually put our hands into it, it'll keep on happening. So the point of this again is to show that we together can make a change. What starts here definitely does change the world, and I believe that with all my heart.